Live. How's it going, Mets fans, whoever you're a fan of? It's your boy Wardy, and we're back at it with our latest post-game here this spring as the New York Metropolitans take their fourth straight game, this time their first win against, yes, the St. Louis Cardinals. Bear with me, everybody, just 1 second as I'm going to change the template. This was the template from yesterday. I got to give you guys the updated version, so let me go find it right here. Just found it. Let's pop that bad boy in and we're good to go. There we go. Beautiful. Hope everyone is having themselves a fantastic Wednesday the way that I know I surely am, talking about another amazing victory. And again, the victory means very, very little for us. More so I'm just focused on, again, position battles, how are the kids doing, and ultimately, guys, if any that are coming off of injury. That's what I'm looking for most in spring, especially this year. So I see Dave Kaplitz, Yoshima, great members. As always, happy to have you guys in here. Thank you so much. What's up, Matsui? How you doing? Hopefully you're pitching well so far there with the San Diego Padres. I got D-Ron, CP, Hey Jack, great member, Graham, my man from Jenny Mets, everyone first chiming in live on our replay. Thank you all so much for being here as we'll get into the biggest takeaways from today's 3-0 victory for the Metropolitans over the St. Louis Cardinals. What I liked, was there anything that I didn't like? And honestly, another day where it was just positives, truly. We saw some elite infield defense from guys like Zach Short at the third base position, making an early rifle argument that, okay, Brett Beatty's job at third base, while it still is for his to lose, he needs to make sure that he steps up properly this spring in order to make sure he starts the year in said position. There's some guys that are looking great early defensively, and you have to wonder how much might that propel the Mets heading into the season. But then you're also left with the reality check that we're still in February. It's just a couple spring games in. And if you think the Mets are for certain weighing options with certain guys over others a couple games in the spring, trust me, it's not nearly that micromanaging than maybe you initially believed. To all those fans out there that already want Trace Thompson as their platoon or everyday DH over someone like Mark Vientos. And hey, Trace Thompson did have himself another nuke today. He has been one of the bright spots for the Mets early spring on the offensive end. So we'll get into his production. Pete Alonso doing Pete Alonso things. Jet Williams producing, showcasing those legs that he does so well, this time driving in a run and doing so, and everything in between in today's game. So appreciate everyone again for coming in. I'm a Rylan Bannon fan. There's a lot of people that are Rylan Bannon fans after the past couple of games. He's been looking good. The 27-year-old journeyman, again, trying to make a case for the Mets here in any way, shape, or form. I believe he's 27. He could be older. I know he's been in the minor leagues for quite a bit, but Bannon, another guy that we'll get into who is likely not going to be impacting the Mets any which way this season, however, is making for a nice spring. And again, you always feel good for these minor leaguers, especially that are trying to showcase their talents. Whether they stay in the organization or not, they're doing everything that they possibly can, and you have to commend them for that 100%. So let's start off today by getting into what is, in my opinion, the most important aspect of today's game from everything that we saw. Honestly, I think I have to give it to Trace Thompson. I do. Don't get me wrong. We'll get into Jet Williams today because Jet is the top prospect. Him doing anything positive is awesome to see. But Trace Thompson, once again, continuing to showcase the offense. I know it's spring training. I know it only means so much. It's not like he did this against Miles Michaelis today. He did it against lesser arms later on in the ball game. But still, Trace Thompson, who's been this journeyman in the league, we all know he hit a grand slammy for the Mets just like 40 hours ago or so. Now comes out today and rips another nuke for the Amazons alongside Pete Alonso. Pete, what has he done so far this spring? He has done absolutely nothing but hit gappers or home runs. He has at least 3 doubles already this spring, the first of which came in the first inning today. And something I want to emphasize with you all before we get on to more Trace Thompson is, I was on Bleacher Report today live in the Bleacher Report app. You guys can check it out. I have it on the community tab for you all. It's linked there. You can watch it on replay. You can check out the segments that they put into polls. But I broke down my ideal 2024 Mets lineup and grading their offseason moves as a whole. We've talked about a lot of these things already to a degree on the channel, and BR asked me to do that in particular. So I was like, sure, I'll go ahead and do that. And one thing that has been made abundantly clear to me is that Pete Alonso needs to be in the top 3 hitting order for the Mets. Whether that's in the second or third hole, doesn't matter too much to me. I kind of prefer third, but I understand the arguments for second. But making sure that Pete Alonso has a guaranteed at-bat every first inning is so vital for a Mets team that's front-loaded in power when looking at their offensive lineup and when looking at that it's a walk year for Alonso. So with there being uncertainty on his future especially, you want to make sure you get as many at-bats as humanly possible with the best pure power hitter in your lineup. Having Alonso in your top 3 does that. He produced plenty today, and I'm sure he would do exactly that throughout the regular season if he's batting, say, 2nd or 3rd versus batting 4th or 5th. So I know there's a lot of hot debates when it comes to the lineup. It's very subjective, but I want the best players to get as many at-bats as humanly possible. As things currently stand over the past couple of years, Alonso has not been getting that. That needs to change, and it needs to start this season. Long overdue. So Pete Alonso, again, who initially had himself a gapper because the outfielder lost in the lights, in the sun rather, then drives in an absolute bomb of a nuke that Daniel Murphy did so good on the call today, too. I have a lot to say on Murphy. We'll get into that, too. But Trace Thompson, again, showcasing that offensive ability once more. He's had a red-hot start to spring for the Amazons there, playing in whatever outfield position they need him to. He got the start in center today, went 2 for 2 with the home run, and that run scored. Lovely production there from Trace Thompson, who I know a lot of you guys are already becoming big fans of. Vientos and Beatty we're going to get into shortly, too. I'm going to tell you guys what you should be concerned about if at all. I'm going to tell you guys if you really feel like you want to jump or not. I'm not getting ahead of myself whatsoever. It's spring training. We're in February. Anyone that's buying too much stock one way or the other is buying too much into spring training. You should not be doing that to that degree this early on, I assure you. But again, we know how these minds on Twitter are going to be. But Trace, again, with another phenomenal day at the plate for the Amazons. Very happy to see that production from him for the depth outfield. That, as things currently stand, is the Mets' 5th outfielder in their organization. So a good problem to have there for the Mets. Starling Marte, Brandon Nimmo, Harrison Bader, Tyrone Taylor, that's your 1 through 4. And then you have Trace Thompson, who, again, if he balls out all spring, potentially could find himself in the mix where the Mets have a very difficult decision to make to round out their bench, which, again, good problems to have if you're the Mets and if you're these depth acquisitions. So we talked there about Trace Thompson. Again, we saw plenty positives. Now let's get into not only Pete Alonso, but I also want to emphasize today potentially what were some of the negatives, if at all. And that does come from Mark Vientos and Brett Beatty. Now, what do I mean by that? Both Mark Vientos and Brett Beatty went 0 for today. I don't care nearly as much about them going 0 for versus how they went 0 for, essentially. Beatty, again, still has yet to showcase what we want to see out of him. It's early on, we know that, but he has a lot to build his confidence. You're seeing a lot of the simple mistakes that he had last year as well in his swing currently, and that's something that I hope can continue to be worked on, because right now, as things currently stand, Brett hasn't done anything to warrant justifying him to be a lock at third base. However, it's spring training 1, so aside from competition battles for position rather, which is the case with Beatty, normally you don't buy in too much stock with that, but knowing that there is somewhat of a position battle 1, but also, again, I'm going back and forth playing devil's advocate and understanding that the Mets' thought process this year is we want to give these kids a leash in a year where we know we have the opportunity to do so. So even if Beatty has a very underwhelming spring entirely, I still feel like he's likely going to start the year at third base unless his confidence is completely shot, which I do not foresee to be the case. Mark Vientos, again, put the ball in play a little bit, didn't have a hit. It wasn't looking anything fantastic with his ABs, but something that Darryl Strawberry, who was in attendance for today's game, said when speaking on Mark Vientos, and that was very important, was Darryl emphasized, yeah, Mark is still figuring out. Mark still needs to figure out what kind of hitter he wants to be in his career. When I spoke to him, that was something that I could clearly tell that he was still trying to navigate himself, because on one hand, if you want to be a power hitter, you're going to be slugging and all that's great, but that's a problem. You want to be a hitter that can spread for all fields, because that's where the power is going to naturally come, i.e. Pete Alonso, for example. We all know Pete, when he's at his absolute best, is putting the ball in play, and a lot of times it's just gappers and home runs because of how strong he is and how good he is with his pitch selection when he's right. And it's not an easy thing with Alonso, because he faces more pitches out of the zone than any other player in the National League at bare minimum. So something to keep in mind. But Vientos, I love the insight there from Strawberry, spoken not only in Mark TV, but Beatty, and how these are things that they really need to fine-tune and figure out with their game, because if you don't have an identity as a young hitter, you have nothing. So that is clearly something that Darryl, again, we all know Darryl Strawberry, whether you love him or hate him, everything he did in the Mets organization, all the great history he had, good, bad, and different, he's one of the best hitters in the Mets organization's history. He knows a thing or two what he's talking about. And furthermore, Daniel Murphy, I cannot credit enough what a tremendous job he was on call the past 24 hours or so for the Mets, along with Gary, and then also with Ron a day or so prior. Absolutely tremendous. He just continued to reaffirm what I already knew about him when I had the pleasure of interviewing Murphy over a year ago after he performed in the Mets Old Timers Day game. We have that video on the channel. Check that out if you guys haven't already. But Murph talked about his hitting philosophy and his approach, and he did exactly that to a T in today's broadcast. You could tell that Gary was taken back and just how awesome it was to be this informative, especially when Murphy says that he rather strike out at times than, put the ball in play, depending on what it's going to be. And that's true. And it was also awesome to hear Murphy talk about why he isn't in the game anymore. He tried ramping up last year, realized that he's not more than a singles hitter, couldn't hit gap to gap, and in today's game, that's going to get you nowhere. Like, he had that kind of self-reflection and realization, which is really cool to hear from now a former player again, but his ability to not only break down guys that he's had previous success or lack thereof with Miles Michaelis on the bump today, or just looking at the fellow Mets hitters and their approach, or even, for example, right towards the end of the game, the second to final out, the first 2 outs there, rather, in the 9th inning came via double play, and Murphy called it as soon as the guy got on base. He's like, and there we go. Now a double play ball is going to come. A couple swings later, bam, double play ball. So very awesome to hear Daniel Murphy's thoughts on just the Mets and his hitting philosophy. And truthfully, if he does want to have a future in play-by-play, in color, he's going to have a great one. I can't say enough great things from what we heard from Murph today. Like, if you really care about the idiosyncrasies of a hitter and getting into that, not even advanced information, but just the mindset, the philosophy of being a really good hitter and knowing how their approach is and how other batters should approach guys, it's really nice to hear from the fan perspective, and I'm sure to many perspectives that you guys have been already reiterating here in the chat. So I want to share my viewpoint there on Murphy, but getting back into this game a bit more there, let's talk. Okay, so yes, we did see some negatives at times, unfortunately, whether that was the likes of Mark Vientos and Brett Beatty having an underwhelming day. Am I buying much stock into it this early? No, not whatsoever. Again, these are guys that the Mets want to give a leash to. But what I am buying stock into, however, is the Mets' uncertainty with their pitching still. Now, look, we look at their pitching today. Awesome numbers. Mets had 7 pitchers today, all of which are not going to be starting the year in the Mets bullpen more than likely. You had Reed Garrett kicking things off with a nice bounce back outing after getting shaken up a bit his first time out there. Josh Walker, same applies. Grant Hartwig looked sharp too, and then you have Banfield and McLaughlin, who's a top prospect, not top prospect, but a recent draft pick for the Mets over the past year or two. You have Corneli and Ramos round things out. Again, the Cardinals had a little to no hitting against the Amazons today, and the pitching, while it was awesome, there isn't too much I feel I need to break down aside from Reed Garrett's arsenal today was interesting. 4-seam fastball, sinker, splitty, slider, and sweeper. Lots of different pitches there that we didn't see his first time out. Sat 96 on the heater, sat 96 on the sink, 88 on the splitty, 91 on the slide piece, and 94 there on the sweeper. Nice little mix there for Reed Garrett. And then, of course, we saw Josh Walker, curveball, changeup, fastball mix, and Grant Hartwig with the sinker, the cutter, the sweeper, 4-seam fastball. Hartwig, a guy that will more than likely get innings for the Mets out of the bullpen this year and hopefully have more success than what we saw in stretches last season. So that's really all you need to know on the pitching front. Lots of good. But the reason why I'm emphasizing pitching here is because of what's been reported elsewhere. We're going to either discuss it in a separate video or we'll just talk about it more on the streams. And that is, the Mets have been monitoring the pitching market, and it appears that they're likely going to still add, whether it's because of guys inevitably going down with injury this spring or lack of production that you're hoping for. So the Mets are very heavily monitoring the pitching market still, both free agent, trade alike, but especially free agent and guys that could be picked up that are, say, cut from others because there isn't roster room where there's upside. Again, Stearns, what he did so well this offseason on the bullpen especially was getting guys with upside for this pen and really getting them at not only affordable prices where you're not just penny pinching, but knowing that you don't need to invest, say, $11-12 million AAV on a reliever when you could get that same production out of guys that are giving you less than that AAV wise, and you can add multiples of versus having to have just one good reliever versus, say, having 3 solid guys or 3 guys that have around the same upside, but maybe have a little bit of a lower floor. So they're still active in the pitching market. It's something that we're going to be talking about more here on the channel, I'm sure. But just for people that are wondering, are the Mets for certain rolling into opening day with this construction of their rotation? There's reason to believe that may still change as there's over a month away, or right around a month or so from the regular season still beginning. So that's kind of the latest updates on that as well. Guys, you all know sounds like a day that ends in Y. I feel like I'm always going to have that issue until I finally realize soon enough to hide it ahead of time. Either way, apologies for that there. Zach Short did look very good at third base for the Mets today. For those that don't know Zach Short, Zach has been, again, another journeyman in the league. Didn't have himself a hit today, has yet to record a hit this spring. However, the Mets picked him up this past offseason. 28-year-old who went to Sacred Heart University, 2016 draft pick, 17th round by the Cubs, and actually has a podcast that he does with Ian Happ, I believe. I'm pretty sure that's part of John Boy Media's podcast network that he still works with Ian Happ with the Cubs. And there's one other person in that mix, so I'm not sure. Zach, who's very familiar with the content creation game, is also familiar with elite defense, as he displayed that looking fantastic at third base today when called upon, and even all over the infield. Wherever Zach Short has been, he's looked good. Also has been the case today with Rylan Bannon. Again, another guy that's not expected to crack the Mets bench or anything like that. Minor leaguer Bannon had some beautiful turns there, playing defensively today, and offensively was able to barrel some ones too. So plenty positives that you saw there from Bannon. And just to make sure, yeah, he won 1-for-1 today with that pinch hit and a run scored. He's off to a really sharp start this spring for Rylan Bannon, already batting .400. Again, means very little, means little to nothing. But the 27-year-old journeyman, again, is another guy that's hoping to be a guy that can be called upon if need be because of injuries throughout the year there, while he'll be in AAA, more than likely commanding things at third base or potentially second, wherever they want to put him there in the minor leagues for Rylan Bannon. So outside of Bannon, outside of all these things, now let's talk about the guy who's on the thumbnail along with Pete Alonso, and a guy that many of you guys really, really like, and that, of course, is Jet Williams. Now, Jet the Met hasn't done anything overwhelming so far this spring in his handful of plate appearances. However, one thing has been a certainty: it is elite speed. As soon as he gets on base, you know he's a speed demon. You know he's likely going to steal second base. And you know that there's a wild pitcher, a pass ball, he's getting a third without a problem. He did exactly that just a day or two ago, causing himself to get on first with a walk and then ultimately getting all the way home because of either a wild pitch, an error, and then ultimately being driven in. That is Jet's best ability. So not only his contact ability, but his speed on the bags, whose OBP. Again, he's like a 400 OBP guy, Jet Williams, when he's at his absolute best. Like, he's so good on getting on base, and that goes in hand with having a small strike zone. Again, the guy's a short schmuck like me, just around 5'6" or so, right? So, like Jose Altuve, you got a very small box that you're working with if you're the opposing pitcher, especially if you're, say, towering 6'6", 6'7", which a lot of guys among starters are in today's league. So, that is where Jet has benefit, and he was able to really rally there, as we would see later on in this ball game, because in the bottom of the seventh, Bannon would get on with a single, and that would be, again, that would go after he had some great defensive turns there the past couple innings. Alex Ramirez with his fourth hit of spring already, if I'm not mistaken, third or fourth, gets on base. Mets outfield prospect as well, looking for a bounce back year after a very underwhelming 2023 in High A Brooklyn. Jet gets on base, doing what he does best. Infield RBI single. Starling Marte impression, if you will. And speaking of Starling, looked solid in some of his at-bats today in his first game of spring, leading things off for the Amazons. Starling, his first at-bat, drove one deep, which was just shy of a home run. Again, nice contact there off of Miles Michaelis, no less. So, encouraging early signs from Marte, even though he did not record a hit today. Looked perfectly fine when he was defending. But Jet was able to drive in a run with that elite speed. There was no chance they were going to get him out at first as soon as he was bolting down that line. And that's what I love. I love these guys with the hustle, the contact ability. Obviously, I want to see guys that are not just reliant on being, singles hitters. I hope that Jet can showcase more of that gap-to-gap ability, which we know he has the power to do so. And hopefully we can see that on full display this spring. Maybe we'll get some Jet Williams bombs too. I mean, crazier things have happened, right? All I know is that so far from what we've seen this spring, there has been plenty of positives. And again, even when the guys aren't performing well, you have to wonder, how are they performing unwell? Like, what's the reason for it? Is it because the pitcher is just working on his location today, just trying to get a good grip of a good feel, maybe his breaking pitches, right? And it isn't working. He's like, okay, now I know I'm not going to go with that grip. I'll go with this grip next time. Like, the context of why guys don't do good in spring is very important, because it goes directly in hand with them starting to get ramped up. Some guys are a lot more locked in than others this time of year. It all depends on kind of their regimens, their routines. But moral of the story is, regardless on their production or lack thereof, so far there have been plenty positive takeaways to take from the Mets organization thus far. And as we continue throughout spring, I'm sure we'll get plenty more. And when I look at everything the Mets have done to this point throughout their first 5 games of spring training, the biggest thing that has stuck out to me out of everything has been pretty much what we were hoping for. It's a looseness. It's a comfortability. It's a team that's having fun out there. This Mets team has a vibe to them, not only from the drills that they're doing, which includes, outfielders quite literally hustling with the machine where they're putting the ball in. It's going to pop up and they have to sprint to catch the ball. And if they don't, everyone else that's incorporated in that drill has to do push-ups. Gave me flashbacks of when I was on the fitness team in high school where we did exactly that. But it's a fun, easy way to keep guys not only fresh, but keep guys focused and incentivized to do well in these fun drills. And you're kind of seeing it already on the field, how they're performing, especially that infield defense, like I said. And there's one thing that I think is better than anything else that we've seen. It probably has been the Mets infield defense if you're not named I can't even say not named Mark Vances. Mark had one bad error so far this spring, then he followed it up really well. He looked damn good defensively yesterday. I'll rightfully argue that. Brett has looked basically what you'd expect. Had one hiccup the other day, but for the most part, it has been fine. I just care not only about his defense, but that bat-to-ball ability. So, from there, I don't really think that there's much more that needs to be harped on. Again, a nice solid outing for the Mets today. They get their 4th straight spring game. They may never lose a game again, knock on wood, as they probably drop tomorrow's. Just an FYI for everybody, we will be having a new video coming out either today or tomorrow on the channel. There will be more post games, of course, along with this weekend. We're probably not going to be covering every single game. And just for a fair warning for people that have been enjoying spring training coverage from me and want to get an idea what the landscape of a schedule is going to be, I'm going to be covering a good majority of them, but there are games I will not be covering, especially ones that are, say, snooze fest, where really no one's doing anything on either side, or if, the Mets offense did nothing, their pitching got cooked, but their pitching got cooked, especially when there's really no cause for concern, whether it's a guy's first spring start or whatever. We're likely not going to cover those games too. Just want to cover games where, there's key takeaways, and even after a fairly underwhelming, not even 2-hour game today, because that's how quick these spring games have been, a 3-0 victory, there were still enough takeaways, in my opinion, to have a worthy discussion for my fans out there that are as locked in on the Mets on a daily basis as I am. So from there, I'm going to answer a couple comments, questions, or concerns, whatever you guys got for me, and then that'll wrap up the show. Thank you guys all so much that I've been watching live on a replay. It really does mean a lot. Help us get to 25K subs, guys. We're so close. We're doing a big giveaway on the channel when it happens. We're also going to be doing an awesome giveaway on the channel real soon too. So again, make sure you guys are on the lookout. Thank you all so much in advance, as it really does mean a lot. And also make sure you guys are chiming into the giveaway that we have with Aura. Click the link, guys, in the community tab that we have. I posted it yesterday, the day before. We're doing a big giveaway for a signed WardyNYM jersey, and the only way that you have to enter is by signing up to Aura's 14-day free trial that I have on the community tab for you guys to check out. Click that link, sign up, and then the best way for your chance to win too is to make sure you email me a screenshot of you just showing me that you signed up. Again, that's all you got to do. 14-day free trial. Sign up. Send me a screenshot over email or over Twitter DM, because this is not just exclusive to YouTube. This is happening on socials too. And I'll be picking a winner from everyone that entered, and we're able to send those screenshots by the end of the week. It is that easy, that simple. So make sure to check it out by clicking the community tab if you haven't already. Shout out today to today's video sponsor, as always, too, with our great friends at BetUS. BetUS is America's #1 sportsbook, as they're safe, secure, and reliable, and they've got you covered with all your sports betting needs. Many of you guys have already been getting in on NHL in-season action, NBA in-season action, MLB futures, which we're going to be doing some awesome live shows in spring training at the Airbnb real soon in a couple weeks. So stay tuned for that one. That's going to be a lot of fun with fellow YouTubers. But if you guys like to get in on all things sports betting, and you're safe and you're especially responsible in doing so, check out my good friends at BetUS by clicking the link in the description. That way you too get 125% boost with your first 3 deposits. It is that easy too. $100 you deposit, say, you get $225 to work with. Times that by 3. That's easy money to work with. That's so much fun too. So again, if you guys know that yes, you like to get in on sports betting, but 2, you are responsible and you're going to make sure that you do it the right way, check them out today, as we're going to be doing some awesome unique WardyNYM picks, props, parlays throughout the regular season that we'll be playing together on the channel. So thank you guys all so much for that too. It really does mean a lot. Bring back Thomas S, says 1200. I'm going to go on a I'm going to go on a limb and say that he's referring to Thomas Sapucki. The OG is back as always. Thank you for the donation, 1200. Hope all is well. Why are no teams biting on Trevor Bauer? At this point, I'm so sorry, but at this point, if people can't seem to comprehend Why? Why Bauer isn't being signed anywhere? Just do some research. I don't know what else to say at this point. Regardless on if it's justified in your opinion or not, there's clear reasons why Bauer isn't in the league today. There's a clear reason why Bauer is not going to be a Met this season, no matter how much you might want him. And again, this is not an ill will towards him personally or anything like that. It's just common sense. It's been said how many times on the public eye why it's likely not going to happen. And I'll leave it at that. You got to believe in the Kings of Queens. Absolutely Guardians of Chaos. Happy to have you in here. Great moderator. It's contract season for Pete. He's going to have a monster year. Book it. I mean, considering Pete has monster years every year, regardless of it being a contract year, I'm going to go on a limb also and say that he's going to have a big year this year too. 100% agree. 100% in regards to that. The Mets are smart, says Ray, won't make the same mistake they made with Bautista, who got a chance to play with the Toronto Blue Jays, and says the rest of the history. All Vientos needs is at-bats. Ray sees Jose Bautista there in Mark Vientos. Very interesting take, Ray. And I understand that for those that don't know, Jose Bautista's story is a fascinating one. He was quite the journeyman in Major League Baseball for a good period of time until he was given his opportunity with the Toronto Blue Jays after being with a bunch of teams, including the Pittsburgh Pirates. And then that's where he broke out. That's where he had the famous nuke in playoffs, and the rest is history. Correct. Do I see the Mets signing a big starting pitching named Jordan Montgomery? I don't think they're going to. No, I think there's teams that are going to beat the Mets for Monty. Do I think they should sign Monty? Yes. I think they absolutely should on a bridge deal if they can, if that's possible. But again, one, I don't know how likely that is of even a possibility where Monty wants to come back to New York, but this time with the Mets versus the Yanks. And two, there's just so many factors going into why the Mets have operated the way that they do. And that's why I'm not buying any report or rumor as a certainty or as something that, we should say, hey, this is for sure going to happen. It may happen. It's a discussion that we can surely have, but it's not something I would personally get my hopes up on so far at this point, February 28th, this spring. Guys, that's going to do it for the live show. Thank you all so much for watching. Mets win by a final score again of 3-0. They look to continue their winning ways. Back at it tomorrow. Until then, have a great rest of your night, day, evening, whenever you're watching this. Stay tuned for consistent coverage on all things Mets all season long here on the channel. And until then, I'll talk to you again real soon.